good to see you here again. We're continuing on with our Moses story. In fact, we're going to go to the end of his life to see where this desert experience, this burning bush experience, what kind of man and leader this grew him into be. I'm Pastor Brenda. I'm glad to see you here again. If you're liking this, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button even. And let's go to the end of Moses' life. I'm going to share just 3 random stories that I personally like. And we're going to see what kind of man Moses grew into that made him known as the most humble man that knew God. In fact, this is Numbers 12:3 again. Now Moses was very humble, more humble than any other person on earth. The unprecedented humility of Moses corresponds to his relationship with God, and that humility proved to be directly proportional to the degree of intimacy he had with God. And we're going to see that tonight in 2 of these 3 stories. This relationship with God grew maybe 2 steps forward, 1 step back, because he was a little bit further along than most of us. We say here often in our church that we grow our faith honestly, 1 step forward, 2 steps back. It's not this straight up kind of growth. We just admit that here and we grow. But I think Moses is 2 steps forward. He's just a little bit better than us. But if you read more into Numbers, Moses still makes some errors. He is this great man who talks to God like we're going to see tonight. But he does make some great errors later in his life, and there is some cost to his life. So it's not great. But what Moses found in the desert, what Moses found in that burning bush, when he found his identity, when he found his placement, see last week's video, when he found that, and then this is what he grew into, and grew to be known as this humble leader that we talk about and admire today. And this is interesting because in the book of Exodus, we get Moses who grew in this direction, and we get this juxtaposition of Pharaoh, who they had started in the same palace. I mean, not the same birth, because Moses was born Hebrew. We know that story. The same palace, same raising. One grew stubborn and suffered a lot of consequences, and one broken, found placement in a living God, and then grew to be this man that we keep talking about. That juxtaposition is very clear here in the life of Moses. So I'm going to just pick 3 stories, and here's the first one out of Exodus. Remember of course out of Exodus 32. Remember after the 10 Commandments moment, then the people who thought Moses had died because he was gone too long, and what do? They create that golden calf. We're going to skip that story. We're going to talk about what happened right after that, though. And it was not good. Remember, this happened not too long after they walked across the Red Sea on dry ground. And they become this fickle already. So this is beginning at verse 7, and God is mad. And again, they just walked across the Red Sea, and Moses just was given the 10 Commandments. This is a God coming to his people moment. And they don't have much tolerance for pain, do they? Before they have to create their own God, create their own way to control the situation. And God speaks this to Moses in verse 7. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go down, because your people," not my people who I've called my chosen people, but Moses, they're your people, "whom you brought up out of Egypt, have become corrupt. They have been quick to turn away from what I commanded them, and have made themselves an idol cast in the shape of a calf. They have bowed down to it and sacrificed to it, and have said, 'These are your gods, Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt.' I've seen these people," the Lord said to Moses, "and they are stiff-necked people. Now leave me alone so that my anger may burn against them, that I may destroy them. Then I will make you into a great nation." Did you know that Moses was offered the same deal as Abraham? That God was going to make him the father of the nations, the father of his chosen people that he would reveal himself to. I mean, he revealed himself to others, but the chosen ones would be through the family line of Moses. He was offered that same deal. But Moses didn't take the deal. And furthermore, Moses decided to talk back to God, to reason with God. I mean, I don't know what's more amazing, that Moses didn't take the offer, or that Moses dared to talk back to God. And notice how Moses does that. Verse 11 now. But Moses sought the favor of the Lord his God. Lord, he said, why should your anger burn against your people, whom you brought out of Egypt with great power and a mighty hand? Why should the Egyptians say, it was with evil intent that he brought them out, to kill them in the mountains and to wipe them off the face of the earth? Turn from your fierce anger, relent, and do not bring disaster on your people. Remember your servants, Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, to whom you swore to by your own self. I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, and I will give your descendants all this land I promised them, and it will be their inheritance forever. You notice how Moses is reasoning with God by throwing back to God exactly what God said he would do? It's like that teenager talking to your parent. You said this, so you said this, right? And did you also notice that Moses again identifies his placement? You are the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That moment in front of the burning bush when God said, I am the God, and gave Moses placement, gave him his identity, and you're a part of this larger story, and this is your heritage. Moses' identity grew from that point. And here was his placement, and here was his moment to say, oh, no, wait, I get to be the father of nations. No. This placement in the story gave Moses his identity, and he wanted to keep that. This is some good stuff. So here's your first question. Have you ever dared to question God about what is going on and used good reasoning like Moses did? And if you did you notice what happened inside of you? Have that conversation. It's a heavy question, but have that conversation with your people. See the changes inside? Maybe it could be you too. Now I'm going to ask you another question, but I don't want anybody to answer. Nobody in your group. Just hear this question and ponder. Are you more comfortable with a controlled distance with God? This is what happened next in this story. Now we're to verse 14. Then the Lord relented and did not bring on his people the disaster he had threatened. God relented. That is a very big thought. God changed his mind because of a relationship with Moses. Now there's lots of theology questions around this. And we've done something on that earlier. Check back. But I want to just focus on this. God changed his mind because of a relationship with Moses. This is the same kind of relationship God desires to have with us, to have with me. God is so personal with us that he moves the universe to get involved with us. We have this Trust Issues with God Bible study that we've written out of this church. You can pick it up on Amazon. But it says several times in this Bible study, this quote. A safe faith says, I know you're omnipotent, so I will feel helpless while I wait on you. A brave faith says, here's my cry, and here's my anger, and here's how I feel. Thank you for blessing the godly. Do you see the difference? This is a cry that comes out of humility. And we're moving forward in this series, and we're going to be talking about what humility is. I'm going to use a lot of the Bible, because the Bible's full of it. It's a good churchy word. And I'm going to use some of the new science to help us understand what this churchy word is so that we can live it out, because it's going to be really good for all of us if we lived a bit more humbly like Moses. Okay, second story, another amazing story. It happens to be in the next chapter. Exodus 33, I'm going to begin at verse 12. One day Moses said to the Lord, "You've been telling me, take these people to the promised land, but you haven't told me whom you will send with me. You've told me, I know you by name, and I look favorably on you." Love that. "If it is true that you look favorably on me, let me know your ways so I may understand you more fully and continue to enjoy your favor. And remember that this nation is your very own people." This is so conversational and so reasonable. But yet, a first read through, maybe even how it hits you, is this sounds kind of haughty. Like, do this for me, God, because I have done this for you. But then remember, this is a conversation coming out of a deep relationship. And when you have this kind of a deep relationship, you get to have this kind of a conversation. If you have just a transactional relationship with God, and you say something like that, well, God, I've done this for you, so you should do this for me. You have those expectations. I can see why this would come across as, ooh, how dare Moses be that way? So this is my next question. Have you noticed that the more you have come to understand this larger story, God, how much more conversational your prayers have become? Let me just throw the context in versus the transactional prayers that you used to pray. But the more you come to know God like this and have these conversations with God, and you see this larger story perspective, that you're actually praying more conversationally, have that conversation with your people and see if you're seeing these changes. I'll be here. Isn't it kind of fascinating to see how your prayers have grown to be more conversational? So let's see where this story ends at. We're going to continue on at verse 14. The Lord replied, "I will personally go with you, Moses, and I will give you rest. Everything will be fine for you." Then Moses said, "If you don't personally go with us, don't make us leave this place. How will anyone know that you look favorably on me and on your people if you don't go with us? For your presence among us sets your people and me apart from all the other people on the earth." The Lord replied to Moses, "I will indeed do what you have asked, for I look favorably on you and I know you by name." Wouldn't you love to have that conversation? This is so personal. God knows you by name. And God desires this kind of relationship with you too. And with me. And did you notice there in the beginning? He said, "Moses, I will give you rest." This is don't chase the crazy busy. This is remember the Sabbath. If you follow me, part of following me is a time of resting. Not the hustle, not the crazy busy you excuse, but what should happen is you will find rest as you are doing the things I'm asking of you. You hear me on that one? So the story continues with God coming nearer. Verse 18. Moses responded, "Then show me your glorious presence." The Lord replied, I will make all my goodness pass before you. I will call out my name Yahweh before you. For I will show mercy to anyone I choose, and I will show compassion to anyone I choose. But you may not look directly at my face, for no one may see me and live. The Lord continued, Look, stand near me on this rock. As my glorious presence passes by, I will hide you in the crevice of the rock and cover you with my hand until I pass by. Then I will remove my hand and let you see me from behind, but my face will not be seen. Personal experience? Wow. But I'm also relieved that Moses didn't get what he asked. God said, nope, you don't get all of that. I'm a larger story God. There's a lot of things you don't know, and you can't see my face. So God didn't say, Moses, you get whatever you want, and this is, no. There are actually some limitations when we pray because we don't know everything that we're asking for. But yet God did respond to Moses' request. They did have this personal experience. And I think that is enough for me to know that I also can have this kind of a relationship with God. And those moments, they do carry me through some of those drier times. So then lastly, we have this random story I want to just include of the daughters of Zelophehad. I may have said that wrong. And we want to begin with remembering, we're talking about the daughters here, remembering the women of this story, the women that kept Moses alive. This was Jochebed, his mother, his sister Miriam, Pharaoh's unnamed daughter, and Shiphrah and Puah, the midwives that kept him alive. All these women involved in Moses' early years. Without the women, there would be no Moses. Numbers 27, 1 through 11 is where this story is. One day a petition was presented by the daughters of Zelophehad, and the daughters' names were Mahlah, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Tirzah. Their father, Zelophehad, was a descendant of Hepher, son of Gilead, son of Machir, son of Manasseh, son of Joseph. This would have been a half Egyptian family, by the way, because son of Joseph, right? These women stood before Moses, Eleazar the priest, the tribal leaders, and the entire community at the entrance of the tabernacle. Our father died in the wilderness, they said. He was not among Korah's followers who rebelled against the Lord. He died because of his own sin. But he had no sons. Why should the name of our father disappear from his clan just because he had no sons? Give us property along with the rest of our relatives. So Moses brought the case before the Lord, and the Lord replied to Moses, the claim of the daughters of Zelophehad is legitimate. You must give them a grant of land along with their father's relatives. Assign them the property that would have been given to their father. So how bold were these women? This was a precedent-setting decision that Moses made because these women knew their worth. They stood in power in front of the powerful because they knew their worth. Worthiness was their birthright. This is a fact. This is a fact about your life too, by the way. Because they knew their worth, they decided to ask this humble leader, Moses, if there could be a precedent change. They didn't sulk around waiting for someone to recognize their worth. No, they walked right into it. And I believe they caught Moses off guard because we've always done it this way before. But then he saw their worth, took their request to God, and God ordered him to grant it. And I want you to catch this last sentence. Humility isn't afraid to change a custom to honor people. I'm going to repeat that one. Humility isn't afraid to change a custom to honor people. All right, I'm going to leave you with that. This is your benediction for the week. How can your decisions, your life, lead with humility so that you may honor people? Because worthiness is their birthright too. And then, I guess in benediction, may I say, may you also know that worthiness is your birthright. I'll see you again.